See?
Yes.
Oh.
Nityam Shuddham Nirakaram Nirabhasam Niranjanam Nityabodham Chidanandam Gurum Brahma Namamyaham.
Vasudevendra Yogindram Natva Jnanapradam Gurum Mumukshunam Hitarthaya Tattva Bodho Bhidhiyate. So, we are now entering into the section of seeing how the evolution of the universe has come about. And at the outset, the clarification is necessary that the purpose of this detailed description of the evolution is not to prove the evolution process to finally prove that creation is real. It is not for that purpose. The process is described because to a mumukshu who wants to know the truth, Satyam, what is Satyam? To him it was said, Atman is Satyam. For him now, for her now, the world is not yet an integral component of the vichar, of thinking. There may be clarity regarding oneself as Atma, but the connection between oneself and Brahman is not there. So that not being connected automatically keeps one big section of one's experience out of the frame of knowledge. I'm experiencing the world, so I must be connected with the world. The world cannot be separate from it because I am the knower of the world. My senses are operative in the field of whichever field they belong to, that belongs to the world. So my eyes see color and form, and this color and form is a part of the world. My eyes do not see inside me. It doesn't see even the brain, my brain. It sees somebody else's brain because that belongs to the part of the world. But it doesn't turn around and start seeing things inside oneself. Certainly cannot see the mind, certainly cannot recognize the thoughts. So we find that our entire interaction, for a thinking person, this is the first step that comes up. And they realize that, like our waking state explained to us, how in the waking state I am a non-separate contactor. I cannot remove myself and keep the world outside as a separate entity because I am the one who contacts, my senses contact the world, and at the same time, I am the knower of that contact. So my senses are contacting the world, and I am also the experiencer of the result that comes out of those contacts. And I am also the concluder whether I like those contacts or I don't like those contacts. And I am finally the knower of this experience. So the big part of me contacting the world, and therefore how am I connected to the world other than through my senses? Yes, it has been said everything is mithya, therefore the world is also mithya. It can very easily be concluded away because that portion has already been covered. Atma alone is satyam. Other than that, everything is mithya. So the world can also be taken into the same parameter and said, okay, this is also mithya. And you can end there. But in the vichar, the dissolution doesn't happen. So the first important figure is, when this process of evolution has been mentioned, for the student, it is first not to prove that it is real, but because there is a sequence in which it has emerged, the reversal of that sequence is how it dissolves. That's the important point. So when you start seeing the process hierarchy funneling the way it happens, then that's the way you trace it back also. So you will trace it back to where now he started describing. He says, I will now tell you how has the evolution of the universe traced itself down to this point where you and I are contacting the world with a belief, of course, that it is separate, but we are in touch with it. At every point, me, the experiencer, is only in touch with the world. There is no separation, really speaking. The separation is just an idea. So how has this evolved? Because the way it has evolved, when I'm evolving, I am actually funneling down, which is a very counterintuitive way of seeing the world evolve, because evolve always brings the meaning like this, niche se upar, so lesser to more, poorer to richer. So you say, oh, he's evolved in his wealth, grown in his wealth. So when you want to say grown, you say like this. But the idea is that what is always the truth is ever expansive and is ever the real, is Brahman, is the only existent thing. That is now subtlest of the subtlest, non-contactable by the individual sense. When I have an individual sense, I don't contact Brahman. I am Brahman, but I don't contact Brahman like an object, like my eye contacts color and form. So Brahman is the subtlest and the very adhishthan. Adhishthan word is absolutely not equatable to anything else. It is the very support. It is the very substratum. Just as yesterday I was saying, the adhishthan of snake is rope. If you don't have the adhishthan, you can't misperceive and see a snake. In the same way, that you and I are contacting the world, we see a world and we see ourselves. What is the adhishthan of this perception? What is the adhishthan of this experience? What is the adhishthan? Where is it taking place? Best example in modern times is when you watch a movie, especially in a theater. When you watch a movie in a theater and it's a very absorbing movie, it involves your senses completely and you identify with one character, supposing in that movie. You identify so much that for some time you forget who you are. You actually start experiencing what the character is experiencing over there. That is why people enjoy movies, because if you did not identify with the characters, you could not have enjoyed the movie, because it is somebody else's story. You can't enjoy that story unless and until there is some element of you which is identifiable over there. The minute you identify it, then now everything starts to make connection in the movie. You identify with one character and everything starts to unfold. The whole picture becomes one picture. But the beautiful part is, where is the picture projected? On a blank screen. If the blank screen is not there, then however effort the producer and the director and the actors and the musicians and the whole team had put in, was there any way of one seeing a movie? It was not possible. This example is worth reflecting. That means unless and until there was this changeless substratum, unless and until there was something which is blank, which had nothing on it, which could actually not lend any color or form or shape to what was going to get projected on it, except lending its own existence to it. These words are very important. What is the screen really doing? Screen is only lending its existence. The screen has to be there presupposing any movie. And that movie is actually a dynamic vision, though it's two-dimensional or now even three-dimensional, but it is entirely inert. It was shot, of course, but limitation of the example. This movie that you're watching on a screen is not live. It's not a live thing happening in front of your eyes. It is entirely inert. But that inert dynamic motion, movement that you experience there, that inert dynamic activity and all the things that function with it, so you feel affection, you feel anger, you feel grief, you feel sorrow, you feel vile. The story is made up of all these emotions put together. Now you are experiencing all those emotions when you see the movie. But for the movie to happen, all that movie that was relayed on the screen, it was projected on the screen. This projection was possible because of the screen's existence. That screen's existence equated to Brahman. Now, supposing your movie was wider and the screen was shorter, but the movie screen was wider, what would happen to the movie? How funny it would be. Of course, it should be in an open air theater. When it's an open air and a short thing, and then you realize that the movie, half of it gets cut away. If half the movie gets cut away, you don't see the full movie because the screen is this much. It's an open air theater, and in an open air theater there is nothing else but trees beyond and a breeze is flowing. Your live senses are experiencing that, but for the whole movie to happen, the screen must pervade the reel, the projection. It must be the background, substratum. And background does not mean that it is not connected. That background, even when it is unconnected, it is separate from the screen, the movie, entirely from the projection. But the very fact that on it the projection happens, this makes it look connected, because without this screen, you can't watch the movie. But the screen can exist without the movie. Screen's existence has no impact on what the movie is getting projected. Whether the movie has a violent scene doesn't mean that the screen gets punctured. Somebody's, pata chala screen ke through the dagger has gone. It doesn't work like that. Someone's shot and the bullet is shot through the screen. I mean, how can we be so assured nothing is going to happen to the screen? Whatever may happen on the screen, nothing will happen to the screen. Mark these words as very important in thought reflection. Whatever will get projected on the screen has no impact to the screen. The same thing is with Brahman, and everything that comes out from it is like a movie projected on it, has no impact on the screen. Has no impact to the screen. Whatever is happening on the screen. So whatever is happening in the name of life and experiences, which brings in our lifetimes, every lifetime we go through pits of grief and through peaks of elation. Every life has both, and in between are all shades of grey. We go through certain time of our life comes when a person experiences the bottommost of experience. You feel there is nothing left more to do in life, or etc. There's this complete sense of abandonment or dejection or rejection or frustration or incompleteness and all those things that one can think of. From that point, And then there is suddenly something happens in life which is like best phase of life. Nothing better could have happened. Maximum happiness and security and success and joy and family and belonging. And from this to this, there are moments that in life everybody experiences everything and shades in between these two experiences. All of this is like a movie projected. The entire life that we are living, entirely, whether it is good, bad, indifferent, whatever one thinks, every bit of it is nothing but projection. That projection is happening, possible. Here the point important is not so much to describe the projection and what are its ingredients so that you can alter them. The teaching is that when you understand the projection, how it has evolved, you can't recognize the screen unless and until you shift your gaze to it. I have always told this was my experiment as a child. I did once. Somewhere you had heard this portion early in life, so you just took it as an experiment. In a movie theater, I decided to not focus the entire attention on the movie, but try and see the screen in between. Almost impossible. But the minute I would get involved in the movie, the way it helped me was I would trace the light beam back to the projector. Because sometimes you see that beam there in the dark pitch and you see the air particles floating in that beam of light. And through that you see the whole. So if your attention is on the screen completely, then you're seeing the movie. And the movie has characters and you enjoy and everything's happening and then you come out saying, oh, But the beautiful part was that if I can only remember that this is just a projected movie while the movie is on, if I can just trace it back to the screen and then see, will I have the same enjoyment from the screen? Will there be the same hiccups or the same dejections that I experience if I can trace back the screen and see the movie? Will it be the same? Is the question clear? Will it be the same if supposing you are able to see the screen, you can't see the screen, but because you see the light beam, you can recognize the projection, and through that you can understand. You never forget that there is a screen blank behind, which is making all this possible. So the minute you have this parallel thought running, parallel recognition happening, is the movie ever going to be as absorbing and engaging as it would have been before you saw that? That's the trick of learning this knowledge. That's the purpose of telling us this evolutionary process. Not to prove that science is busy proving ye kahan se aaya, kya hua. They are missing the point completely. The point is, jo kuch bhi ho raha hai, it is not that it has never happened before or it will not happen again. It is eternal. This creation which has come, which we are experiencing, which has come, we are saying, because we are experiencing it now. It is almost like saying the movie started when I started seeing it. You see, I reached late in the theater. I was 15 minutes late. Movie had already started. When I sat down, for me the movie started when I sat down. Is this the way in which we will discover what the creation is all about? That means when I am born, I will start figuring out now where has the creation come from. Scientists are busy. Of course, we don't mean just science itself, but we are missing the point, and the point is, if there is any creation possible, can we trace it to its adhishthan? Can we trace it to its ashray? Where is it happening? Is space in which creation is happening, or is space the one which is created? If we can answer this question, maybe we are much more closer to the scientific inquiry of truth. We presume the evolution is happening in space. All the universe is in space. All universes, galaxies are in space. Space seems to be the first existent. Space, if there is a space, equate space to the screen, then you see the whole evolution of cosmos. But is space final, or is space created? If space is created, then what is the adhishthan for space? On which is the ashraya in which space seems to be evolved into? This process of evolution that through Vedanta we come to, primary purpose is, of course, by the process you learn a great objectivity of the world. It is not something that is hypothetical. When we say that it is, the purpose is not to detail it or to explain it as real, the idea is not to dismiss it as something unreal also. It is not a hypothetical theory. It surely is a model which must include, for me to get Brahma Gyan, for me, my knowledge to be complete, I must also know about the world and how it comes. So it is a model provided, no doubt about it, but a model is always valid if it is experiential, if it proves itself an experience, and that this model does. So there are two things that I have mentioned just now. One thing is, before we get into this evolutionary process that Vedanta is telling us now, our mind must set into the fact of looking at it not with a view that Vedanta is telling us, ye hi aise hi hua hai, therefore this is real. The mithyatvam of it is what it wants to establish. Even though ye aise hua hai, it has come about because its ashraya is on something. It's dependent on something. Therefore, the entire creation still remains mithya. And the second thing it wants to say is that the way in which it evolves is the way in which you trace it back. If you have any, when you watch these mystery things, movies or stories you read, how from one clue, how do you find the thief? Someone's stolen something. How do you find the thief? You start by finding first clue that is available in front of you. Has he left some clue behind? Has she left some clue behind? That should trace the clue will trace it back to the recognition of the thief. In the same way, what is the clue that I have is this experiential world. If I am not able to trace it back in my thinking because we are dependent on the senses and the senses cannot trace us backward totally. We are waiting, maybe science does in 200, 500, maybe 5,000 years, we don't know, maybe. But today it is not. So what is my way of finding the evolutionary process? Brahman means something that Vedas have offered to us, so that I am able to now pick up the clue which is in contact with me, which is the world now that I experience, and it will be available for any janma, for every janma, for everyone. Creation is eternally there for us to experience till we have a recyclical process going on thanks to our ignorance, which is another process. So the minute I have this in front of me, this is my clue. So Shastra is telling me the evolutionary process up to the point of my clue that I can contact and see. And then with the help of Shastra's knowledge, I can now trace it backwards. And I recognize finally that the adhishthan, Shastra has told me, is Brahman. And that Brahman, later on, this author is going to connect both the portions, what we have already studied as the individual inside, and now what we are going to study as the individual outside. And later on, in the next part of the text, the author will connect them both and say, see, therefore, you are Brahman. This Atman is Brahman. The final equation that gets established in Vedanta. There is only one statement which is Vedanta. I've said this many times and I'll repeat it forever because this is a fact. I have heard it, therefore there is only one statement in the name of Brahma Vidya. If Brahma Vidya is to be given to a qualified seeker, all that the student would want to know is, what is the truth? Or whatever the question is, answer will be Tat Tvam Asi. And there are certain more statements like these. These are called Mahavakyas. Mahavakyas means concluding statements. They're the primary statement, Mahavakya. This is the ultimate statement. Tat Tvam Asi is one of the statements. There are many statements. It's become popular that there are only 4 Mahavakyas, but Vedanta study keeps giving these statements in different forms in a conclusive way. What are you? A student doesn't know what does this come from, where have I come from, where am I going, how many janmas are there, what is happening, where is sukh, where is dukh, where is disparity. There are billions of questions to every human being, which are left unanswered in our life experience completely. We have never found a wise person enough who has given us all the answers. We always find that some answers of ours are met, but some answers we just gulp it down. We just stay with them because we don't expect anybody evolved enough or qualified enough to give us those answers. We just forget about them in course of survival and time as we keep growing older. But if there is someone who sustains it and stays with it, there is no person who can give you complete answer. It is the Shastra that has a complete answer. And if the person is qualified enough, etc., etc., that's a different issue completely, where that person is communicating, and all that person will represent is the Shastra Drishti itself. There will be no separation between the two. And what is it? Tat Tvam Asi. The Tvam Pada. Pada means word. The Tvam Pada Artha. Padartha. The Tvam Pada Artha has already been disclosed. Atma Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mithya Iti. And who are you? Vyatiriktaha, Stula Karana Sukshma Sharira, etc. All that. This is the Tvam Pada. What about Tat Pada? This Tat is said to be Ishvara. We will not bring that here at this point because the text hasn't called it for. We are starting by saying this Tat Pada is where this process is starting. This portion is now starting. And later on he will equate both of them. Tvam Tat Asi. This you are. Both of them get reduced back to their source because now you know where it has come. So this you have reduced back to Atma. Whether it is through Panchakosha Vyatiriktaha, whether it is through Avasthatraya Pariksha, you have done this figuring out, I am not this, I am not this, I am not this. Therefore, you have traced it back to Brahman. And now you trace it, the world, back to Brahman. So what is the purpose of evolution? Not to prove that this world is real, but to help us to trace it back to where is its adhishthan? Where is this taking place? And for that he says, the author now says, Atha, now I will explain Chaturvimshati Tattva Utpatti Prakaram Vakshyamaha. We will now explain Chaturvimshati, 24 Tattva Utpatti. This Tattva Utpatti, you call them as elements, you call them as factors, you call them as categories, you call them as divisions. Division is also another word. How the world is divided. That is what I'm going to talk. And as I said, 24 factors are not conclusive. There are different darshanas who give different
numbers. They can go up to 100 factors. Division can be up to 100 factors. Like we saw yesterday, if it is in the names of Anumana, Anu, the school which will say it is Anu, those Vaisheshikas will say the combination of atoms and molecules is, say let's start like science did, subelectronic particles and electronic particles and electrons and protons and neutrons, and then becomes molecule, and then molecules gets together. So what have we done? It's an evolution. So on one hand you reduce it, and then you expand it. This is the way you understand what this is made up of. What are the entire chemical world? How many are there in that table? Forgot again. What is that table? Composition table or something chemistry has?
Table. The periodic table.
Absolutely, the periodic table. Now, the whole periodic table is telling us what are all the elements in the world. So it's nothing new. We know that we are in the process of seeing the divisions there in the world, recognizing how they are held. How is the world held? That division he's now, in Vedanta, we are saying in a very simple way, which is experiential, recognizable. And that is 24 factors, out of which 17 we've already done. We'll talk about it, we say. I'm sorry, this was what we did yesterday. Darshanas, different darshanas have different divisions. This was the Buddhist one that I did not cover up yesterday, but I'm just keeping the slide for whatever, 2 minutes in case you want to see it. They become relevant later on in more detailed discussions. At this point, all we want to say is 24 elements is from the Vedantic perspective that this author has brought about. That's all that each school can have their own way of dividing the world. Okay? Now, what is he said, I will now talk about the 24 factors. And to take the 24 factors, he starts with what is Māyā. To say where it comes from, he first gives us the biggest starting point. We said Brahman is the changeless entity. Screen is changeless. Nothing happens to the screen. Then when I am watching the movie, on what is all this changes happening? Where are all these happening? Wherever it is happening, in that context of screen and reel projected, here it is Brahman and Māyā. So what is Māyā? Māyā is an introduced word. It is an added word to show that it is the very origin of this entire changing world. So every aspect of creation can be reduced back to Māyā. But can Māyā exist itself? Like, can the reel be seen without the screen? No. So for Māyā to be seen, functioning, for Māyā to express, for Māyā to even have its existence, movie can only have the existence if there is a screen. For Māyā to have existence, the screen has to be there. So Māyā is dependent entirely, ashraya hai, on Brahman. So what have you first established in your thinking? Brahman always is, but Brahman is changeless entity. Being changeless, how do I account for all these changes in the world that I see as the world? Because the very definition of world is change. So where does all this change come from? Change belongs to the Māyā aspect. Māyā aspect is not an independent entity. Māyā aspect itself is not an independent entity. Māyā aspect is that aspect, like I said yesterday, in the milk, to set the curd, we add curd itself. So it doesn't mean that there was curd. Of course, in the example, it means there was curd before, therefore I took that curd and then that curd. But here, don't take the example into that aspect. Just take the example to say some element from the world itself is what has been picked up. And that is what is said as the integral ingredient of every change. Okay? So far? So far? Yeah. So this being the integral
changing principle. Maya becomes the integral changing principle. Never ever operative on its own. Never operative independently. Has no existence independent. Cannot function independently. It doesn't exist, so how can it function? So Maya has no independent relevance, seen separate from Brahman. Yet, the classification has been made, or the division has been introduced, or the separation is indicated and pointed only to explain the changing world. And how is Maya contributory to the changing world? Is the entire process of evolution. It is Maya which is the cause of entire universe, creation. How is it the cause is what is going to be coming? What is the way in which it has divided? This Maya, before it says it's the cause, says what is Maya really made up of? Maya keh dena is just another word. As I've said in one of the initial classes, if anybody remembers or worth revising, I'm mentioning again, nothing in Vedanta is not experiential. Vedanta is not a speculative knowledge. Vedanta is not a theory. Vedanta is not hypothetical. Vedanta is pointing to something which is an experience which misses our perception somehow. Because we are involved in something else. We just don't pay attention to it. For anybody who would pay attention to it, it would be validly there already to recognize. Okay? So what really is Maya made up of? It is not some like say in chemistry, the periodic table. It is not just brought about elements like that and put them in that class. Because it is classified means because it is like that seen, so it gets classified and so it can be taught and so somebody else can depend on the periodic table to know what is its, what was it that we would know? What is its composition? Each element has a certain number or something like that it was, no? Now, because it is so, so it is written. So in the same way, Maya, Shastra says, is gunatmikam. Guna. It has guna. Guna means, it's a very strange word. Again, no English translation possible whatsoever. Guna has to be understood as guna. Its closest translation would be attributes, characteristics, qualities. But you have to see guna as a guna. That tuning will have to be done. Because if you depend on characteristics, attributes, qualities, then we already have a meaning for these words, which is a very compromised meaning of guna. It's limiting meaning of guna. Guna is the very character, flavor, I don't know. You put all these words together and you get the meaning of guna. What are these gunas? Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. So Maya is made up of Sattva, Rajas and Tamas gunas. Is made up of means it has these three gunas. These three gunas together is Maya. Three gunas are Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. These are the ingredients that make Maya. Maya is recognized by the functioning of these three gunas. I'm putting in different sentences that maybe some sentence will click with some of you. So, because guna word means, it doesn't mean Maya hai aur fir uske andar guna hai. ये गुण ही माया है. माया ही ये गुण है. और इन तीनों गुणों को मिला के is Maya. What is Sattva, Rajas and Tamas? I have almost, yeah. What really are these qualities, attributes, or functions of these three gunas in general first? सत्व गुण किसे कहते हैं? रजस इस रजोगुण किसे कहते हैं? और तमस और तमोगुण किसे कहते हैं? What is sattva guna? The closest you can recognize its function, sattva gun mein means jnana shakti. Wherever there is the capacity, shakti, like yesterday I said, Māyā is entirely shakti. It is that power of Brahman, power in Brahman. I don't know which preposition to use because Māyā and Brahman are inseparable in that sense. But the power aspect of Brahman is Māyā. The Shakti aspect of Brahman is Māyā. Now, which are these Shaktis? Jnana Shakti. That capacity to know. Just to know, to learn, to know. Being aware of intelligence. Gyan ki Shakti, wherever it is involved, is the Sattvic Gun. What are its other shootouts, let's call it? Now, what are the other shootouts of these? Sattvic Gun. Wherever there is Sattvic Gun, there is purity. Purity means Shuddhata. Not just cleanliness. It means it is pure is a very subjective word. Means it's a very difficult word to explain. It doesn't have any other thing added, mixed in it. Pure means it has no impurity in it. Which doesn't have impurity is pure. When water doesn't have impurity added, water is pure. So pure is actually its nature. Purity is its nature. Because when there are others added, then it becomes impure. So it is pure. Nirmal, yeah, okay, also. It is tranquil, peaceful. We will all associate this with our minds actually. States, moods, etc. But the quality means this is the quality there. It's equanimous. It is bright. Bright as in, because it's Jnana Shakti. It is light. It's illuminating. It's illumination. When you wake up the first thing in the morning, if you're woken up after a fresh sleep on a peaceful mind when you slept, means when you didn't have a lot of disturbance in your mind and you had slept, means you had slept content. If you had slept content yesterday, happy that you lived the day very well and then you slept like we did in our workshop. If you've slept well like that, then in the morning, how will you wake up? Bright. You are, I joke about it, or I have a view of it that if you have had a good day yesterday, lived as per dharma, lived as per what you're supposed to live, you will sleep as per nature will allow you to sleep. You will wake up as you are supposed to wake up, which is bright. You will wake up with illumination. You will wake up with a surge for expression of life, because the gunas is what's made you. You'll come to this later on. At the moment, let me just explain this much. So sattva is bright. It brings the sharpness in a person. It brings balance. All these aspects are aspects of sattva. Each of these gunas has something which is binding, binds you. The binding aspect of sattva is that it binds you to happiness and looking for peace on existential planes. Here I've written earth for whatever reason. But it means you get attached to happiness. You bind yourself to search for happiness, to even have happiness, then you get stuck to it. So sattva makes you get cling to, stuck to. It binds you to happiness and peace. Then that means it doesn't make you move forward for your growth. So the minute, supposing there's some stage of life where I have become content and happy, now I'm stuck there. Because this is what, I will not put more purusharth beyond this. This is what I'm seeking. All of us are seeking happiness. If I'm happy now, what more do I want to do in life? I'll be happy. Let this happiness continue. That means where am I stuck? I'm stuck because this is not your inherent nature. So the peace and the calm and the tranquility that sattva possesses and brings kind of attaches you as if this is final. Happiness that you were seeking. So sattva guna is seen as jnana shakti, and sattva guna expresses itself as these. Wherever you see this, it must be combined with brightness, illumination, intelligence, peacefulness, calmness, equanimity, purity. There are more you can add. Once you understand the characteristic, you will see you can expand a bit. Second is rajas. What is rajas? Rajas guna is kriya shakti. Capacity to act, capacity to do, being active. Many of the people in the world, when the first time I heard go-getter, I didn't understand very well. No, they're like those go-getters. They're always active. They're ambitious. They're energetic. Because they're so active, energetic. They are restless. They're agitated. That if something doesn't go in your favor, some of us get agitated quicker, some do not get agitated, some do not care for agitation. Not that one is better than the other. It is just that the rajas guna is there. When there is restless agitation, there is activity, orientation for activity, willingness for activity. You want to do something. There are people who will say, "Baatein kam karo, kaam zyada karo." So you'll find that get down to doing, man. Move your hands, move your legs. Yeah, just do something. Get up and act. Don't just keep philosophizing, or don't just keep I will do and I will blah blah blah. Just do what you want to do. Just if you like this, do this. That kind of a thing is all rajas. It is also very primarily motivated by result. You look for result. So the motivation comes from result orientation. It's result guided. So your activity is not like loka sangraha, welfare. Even in that there will be result orientation. You do it also because you seek something from there. So it is a whole temperament of the person is guided by seeking result. The big downfall of it, like in sattva guna, is what binds you. In rajas, what actually binds you is completely to an active framework of thought and orientation, and you're constantly attached to something or the other, someone or the other, and you're always hankering for objects, yearning for objects and objective pleasures. So you are always restlessly yearning. So how is all this material world expanded? Because maximum people would fall in that category. I also, of course, joke that, anyway, besides the point. So when you want more and more of material objects for pleasure, you hanker, you want this, you want that, then I want this, then I want that. The minute this is finished, it's not that you sit back and say, "Acha, now next one needs to be done."
अब इसके बाद इसके बाद इसके बाद इसके बाद. So even if you've traveled to Everest, if you've conquered Everest, you will look for K2. I have to go to K2 because K2 may be lesser in height, but it's more difficult to climb. So if you've done K2, now what will you do? K2 is supposed to be the ultimate in the mountain summit. I think I understand that way. I may be wrong, but I think so. Whatever. So if supposing K2 is the ultimate in mountaineering, now what will you do? Restless, because now there's nothing else to conquer. Now that means I need to harness myself somewhere else, something else. So I'll either plunge in the ocean, start exploring the ocean, or go to the moon. I'll enroll myself for a space program because I have to do something. Some of us say, I have to do something. In this time of quarantine, most of us, or self-isolation and things like that, who are the people who've had very, very difficult time? Are the people who have a lot of rajas. How do you keep them in four walls? How do you keep them in, say, a few more rooms? From one room, there is this constant. You saw so the minute it's lifted up, there is a rush outside. For what purpose? For what prayojan? Whatever, doesn't matter. Let's just get out of the house. It's not. I hope I'm conveying it well, because in the past I don't think many people understood correctly. The idea is not to say this is better than the other. This is not judgment of people. This is understanding guna. Māyā has 3 gunas. So wherever there is sattva, doesn't make it higher or better. Sattva is this. Recognizing a guna as the purpose of education. So rajas means whenever I find myself absolutely yearning for activity, it'll be difficult for a person to say kuch mat karo. The one who will have rajas. So wise thing would be, when we understand there is a rajasic guna, best thing would be to direct it. Rather than the इतना hyper है, इतने ये हैं, इतना वो गुस्सा होता है, इतना ये होता है, पता नहीं क्या. Something people go offshoot completely. And here we are not even talking about individuals. Māyā is the material of this creation. So once I finish this sentence, say tamas, the sentence next would be, which now I am saying, everything in the world is made up of 3 gunas. There is nothing that can exist without 3 gunas. That means every experiential object will have all 3 gunas in it. Everything has 3 gunas. So what is tamas? Tamas means I neither have Gyan Shakti nor Kriya Shakti. I have no expression of wanting to know and learn, and I have no eagerness, no enthusiasm, I have no motivation, I have no drive either to do or to learn. The lack of both. And how does that express itself? As inertia, dullness, heedless, sloth, lethargy, procrastination from laziness. And then it brings a certain kind of a darkness. Tattva is absolutely opposite of tamas. Tattva means brightness. Nobody from outside can tell you whether you are dull inside or not. Objects we can analyze, but person, yourself, you would know whether you are bright or you are not bright. So that whenever there's a tamasic guna, sometimes we just don't want to do anything. Why is weekend such a big craze in the world? Looking for weekends. Because on weekends, what are you supposed to? Not do anything. That's why we hold classes on weekend, because you are supposed to do something important on weekends. Do not do anything on weekends. But if you want to go out for breakfast, they don't start before 9, because
weekend means brunch time, means आराम से उठना, आराम से, let me just, okay, once a while आराम से is good, but when this आराम से becomes your habit, tamas is the one that is expressing. There are many things. This portion can go on into classes and classes, and there can so many management programs can come out of it. There's so much self-evolution that is possible just by the knowledge of these three. In fact, these three can give a whole direction to our life. When you just get to know about these three, you will direct your life because you know what is to be encouraged, what is to be directed, and what is to be discouraged. So this tamas, the greatest problem with it is, the greatest downfall of it is the negative point. Like sattva has the negative point, it makes you attached to happiness. Rajas has a negative point that it makes you attached to actions. Tamas has a negative point that it binds you to delusion. Delusion means holding on to wrong thinking. आप मानने को तैयार ही नहीं होगे कि आप गलत सोच सकते हो. You hold on, not only गलत सोच सकते हो, wrong is, it's a difficult, again, subjective way of understanding. It's delusion. What is you see something else and you call that as right. So it's a completely ulta way of seeing. Sattvic person will see a thing one way. A tamas, not a person, I'm sorry, I make myself stand corrected. Sattvic guna will see a thing in one way. Tamasic guna will see it absolutely the opposite way and call it real. That's delusion. It is also a severe form of attachment to inaction. There is a peace, shanti, in inaction. We all know that laziness gives us a certain kind of a enjoyment. Procrastination gives us a certain kind of aram. Heedlessness has a certain kind of a joy in it. When you are just, why are most of the accidents happening in the world, especially in a teenage life when we have? Because of the heedless enjoyment, the enjoyment that comes from heedlessness. I can't care karke. We'll see what happens. So there's no concern for result at all in tamas. What is in rajas? There is a complete attachment to result. What is in tamas? There is no concern for result. Anything happens is okay. After all, everything is, finally when you get the knowledge, it's the worst point. The justification ka bahut dimag chalta hai then. After all, everything is Māyā, no? Even if this much you understand, when tamas mood mein aayega, so after all, everything is Māyā. How does it matter whether I do this or I do that? After all, everything is going to be all falsified. Everything is the same. If everything is the same, why are we taught? We should be taught everything is the same. We should be taught doesn't matter. Why is there three gunas? If everything is the same, then why should there be three gunas and its distinctions to be made? So there are these this is something which stands out in Vedic literature. Classifying the world not in inertness, but classifying the world in expressions that are seen of all life forms and inert objects. It's inclusive. So the same sattva, rajas, tamas is combining also to make a stone, and the same sattva, rajas, tamas is also combining to make a human being. Everything comes from sattva, rajas, tamas and its combination. So every aspect of life is built around, manifested around. All manifestation of creation has its ingredient of these three gunas. I have forgotten a lot of my physics and chemistry, sadly.
I wish I had not, because they have a very beautiful way of explaining this portion. But if you remember the periodic table, or maybe I'll look up to it and bring it as a screen, the periodic table. Imagine you studying this periodic table and understanding the world in terms of copper and iron and magnesium and calcium and arsenic, etc. If you have studied only chemistry and you've taken a master's in chemical whatever, now your whole view of the world is around these. I may not be very accurate, pardon me, like I said, I have forgotten all of it. But now if I suppose I have a knowledge of biology, the first time when I read the human anatomy, it was raptures. I just couldn't get over the fact that before this point I was ignorant of all this and it was existent. That my body has the cells and it is made up of organs, and those organs are functioning, and there are nervous cells which will die once, do not get generated again, etc., etc. The whole thing opened up. What? It opened up something that was already there. But before I knew it, what was I? Ignorant of it. This is how, when you get tuned to how you see the world in terms of sattva, rajas and tamas, and in world, remember, I forgot to mention this sentence in the beginning of the class, the world, even when we say outside this body, I did say we are contacting it. That means I am a part of the world. So everything becomes a part of this world, including me. And everything has got this three gunas. Trigunatmika Srishti. So what is Srishti? Srishti is the technical term for whatever gets Srishta. Srishta means emerge. Creation has got this still grossified meaning. But Srishta means that which has emerged. Srishti is Trigunatmikam. So you don't just see it in terms of elements and matter division. When you get tuned to seeing Srishti from guna division, then all living beings have gradations of the three gunas is also included as a living entity. Matter and living entity is both divided into three gunas. They're both merged as one division. And all of it is three gunas. So I don't stand separate as a living being and saying I am greater than the inert object. The entire creation, including me, is trigunatmikam. And what is this Srishti? Therefore it is Māyā Srishti. Māyā, if we have understood even a little now, Māyā, Ma not, Ya that. That which is not. Means that which is not an independent reality. That which is an ever-changing reality. Dependent reality. That which is ever dependent and has no existence of its own independent of Brahman. It's adhishthan, जिससे उसको आश्रय मिलता है, उसको एग्जिस्टेंस मिलता है. स्क्रीन से एग्जिस्टेंस मिला मूवी को. That lending existence, it means that. So Brahman lends existence to everything, and Māyā is the Shakti, expressing as Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti, and just pure existence Shakti, just existence, Rehna. That's tamas. When there is lack of two, then that means I am just happy to be. There's so many people, majority of human beings. You know what difference between rishis and all of us is? Rishis were highly sattvic. They grew the sattvic component in them. They harnessed it. Since we are made up of all three,
A rishi before becoming a rishi is also made up of all three. But what keeps us in this bondage of happiness seeking and results and inaction, etc., we don't wish to harness it. After knowledge also, we will not wish to harness it. But rishis or Vedic vision, let me put it this way, this is more accurate the way I will put it now. In our Vedic vision, which is only centered at moksha being your primary purpose, because everything is Brahman, whether you know it or not. Before I knew it, I was made up of nerves and organs and etc. I was already that. I could have spent my whole life, supposing I studied economics as a subject, I wouldn't have known what is happening to this muscle and where it's originating from, where it's ending and what function it does and how to strengthen it or what happens if this happens. The whole thing I wouldn't have known. But I would have lived a life. In the same way, Vedic vision says, and I started my first class, orientation class by that, purpose of human being gets fulfilled in the knowledge of oneself. What is oneself? So Vedic vision was only centered at maximizing the life potential out of every opportunity of a human life. And to maximize that, this is one of the ways. Go on living a life where sattva guna is grown and tamas is kept under control and rajas is directed. There is a lot more, but I'm going to not add now because the context leaves us with, we get too overwhelming otherwise. So these three is being the primary portion. Since everything is Māyā ultimately, but I may not know this at this stage because I'm not standing separate from it. I'm a product of it. So when my mind, when I don't, or when my desire is not fulfilled, I get angry. This anger is there. I experience it. So I'm already a product of creation. Māyā Srishti. Not real, but there. The classification will help me to understand what are the aspects of me that I need to grow, that I need to control, that I need to direct, that I should never slip into. I can slip into some laziness because it's good for mind to be rested. And I will say, yes, it is important to take rest because I think if you are not guided at the right point to say, do not just go on encouraging your sattva or rajas and ignore your tamas. There are certain tamasic elements, right time. It's okay once in a while to sleep extra. It's perfectly fine because it balances. But what one has to be careful is that sattva by itself only nourishes when rajas and tamas is kept under control. There is no way of directly growing sattva. You only grow sattva when your rajas and tamas is kept directed. So if you don't let tamas and rajas grow, sattva grows. And indirectly, whatever contributes towards sattvic, they help. So not sleeping late every day, supposing. Not getting up late every day. If you get up late every day, what is growing? Tamas is growing. Now, if tamas is growing, what is happening to sattva? To that an extent, it has lost the opportunity to grow. Now, supposing you get up, say 5 days a week, you get up on time, and it's okay 1 day or 2 days, according to your tamas proportion or sattva proportion, it is okay to have that little inertia. Sometimes procrastination is very good. Thank God I didn't take the decision when I took and I postponed it 1 day because it worked in my favor. But when do you procrastinate? Out of laziness or out of indecisiveness? Out of lack of clarity, if you have procrastination, wonderful. But out of laziness, if it goes on happening, like a lot of our homes in these times, because it's experiential everywhere, if you don't enjoy folding clothes, when you were going out to work, what was happening? Fatafat se. But when you're now at home and you don't enjoy folding clothes, what happens? And you don't have a helper to fold clothes for you. Pile, and then you keep taking out from the pile only, because what is this kind of an activity? It has a joy, see, it has an enjoyment there. That's why you don't get down to doing it. Because there is an effort going to be involved in something you just don't like, and it doesn't matter, tomorrow I have to wear it, or 5 days later I have to wear it. Pile, pick up the first one on the top, and then it goes. If you're not very conscious of all this, and just pick it up, it's okay, I have to just stay at home, who's going to iron? Now, what is all this aspect of life? It's an expression of life. What you have to pick up here is gunas is identified through the expression of life it exhibits. That's the classification Vedic vision has given us. It's a complete different orientation to what science gives us. Because science has divided matter. But this division is a division of living beings and matter, because we don't see them as separate. Nothing stands separate from Brahman, the very living force. So everything has these three gunas. It is trigunatmikam Māyā. And therefore it is, Srishti is also called Māyā Srishti. Not real as existent, independent, just as the movie is a Māyā Srishti. It's completely whimsical. It's completely a creation. It's completely a creation. There is no reality in that movie. That's called fiction otherwise. But here, it is called creation. Māyā Srishti. The whole world and everything we live in it is Māyā Srishti. And from this Māyā, next class we will start. From this Māyā made up of three gunas, the first stage of evolution is the 5 elements. 5 elements. Now, this we will do in details in the next class. In the next class. I'll just end the class. Sarvesham swastir bhavatu, Sarvesham shantir bhavatu, Sarvesham purnam bhavatu, Sarvesham mangalam bhavatu, Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, Sarve santu niramaya, Sarve bhadrani pashyantu, Ma kaschit dukha bhag bhavet.